So in today's video, we're going to be covering French nails, bitten nails, acrylic application, the lot. So grab a brew, take a seat, and let's get started. So my lovely nail biter is back. Now, she hadn't been able to get in for 2 or 3 weeks, so it was about 5 weeks after I think I did her last set. So unfortunately, she didn't have any left on, so I am going in with a full fresh set for her. But I would like to point out, look at the growth. She has been really good with them and she's hardly bitten. So, do you know what I mean? It just goes to show, actually, wearing nails can really, really help. So we are just creating as much space on the nail plate as possible, but also at the same time being super careful. Nail biters often bite around their skin, so they may have cuts. They may have bitten cuticles, hangnails, that kind of thing. So we need to be super aware of the area that we're working on. So what I'm doing is I am just using my cuticle pusher bit to lift up that cuticle. Now this is like an etch and loop tool. I did try the loop tool, but I'm not used to it yet, and I don't know whether I'm going to keep using it. In all honesty, I think I might just stick with my usual process of lifting it and then getting the flame bit in there, just because I feel like I'm scraping at the nail plate, and I'm probably not, but I'm just not that comfortable with it. So ramble over. But yeah, once I've done all of that and I've lifted that pocket and I've created that space for my, for the e-file bit to go in, I'm going to go in with my e-file bit. Now, I'm just using a very fine bit. I don't need it to be strong. And then I go in on forward down the right-hand side of the nail and then reverse down the left-hand side of the nail. I'm not doing a lot of passes. The minute I feel like I'm doing more passes, then I would get a new e-file bit or I would throw that one away, because obviously we don't want to be overworking that area, especially not on a nail biter. And also I'm not digging away at that side wall. I'll literally just touching it. I mean, it's hard to tell obviously on a video, but I want to make sure that that e-file bit is as parallel to the nail as possible. And that it's really getting tucked in down there. Just like that, you'll see it's just a very gentle tickle around that side. All I want to do is make sure the nail plate is clean and there's nothing, no kind of detritus or rubbish down the side walls that obviously could cause lifting, because anything on the nail that shouldn't be there can cause lifting. So now I go down in reverse down the right-hand side of the nail. I am basically just doing this to get into those corners really well. I used to do it in reverse all the way around, but actually I find this way I really get in there. And I can also kind of, but with the e-file bit that I've got, I can kind of remove any dry bits of skin as well. Hardly had to nip on this set, and because she gets regular manicures, you find when you do regular manicures on people, the cuticle work just gets so much easier over time. Even if the first time you're kind of prying the cuticles off the nail plate, you'll find that as you go along and the more regularly you do the prep, the less you'll have to do it and the easier it'll get. So again, trying to work with that kind of point as parallel as possible. I don't want to be pointing into the nail, so I kind of almost want it to be sitting on the nail. So again, just going down 1 or 2 swipes down that side of the nail, just to make sure it's totally clear, and then I'll go in and I'll etch the nail plate in a moment. And while I've got you, if you do enjoy this kind of content, I'm trying to do this more and more. So please do drop me a like and a follow, and let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to cover, because I'd be more than happy to. Once we've done that, we need to go in and remove any cuticle. Like I said before, there is minimal to remove on my client now. I think she pushes them back as well herself, but look at that. There's hardly anything. The tiny little, little bit that there is there, these scissors will get off because they are fabulous. And they're as sharp as the day I got them ages ago. So highly recommend the Katie Barnes cuticle scissors. But yeah, so I will literally just remove, I mean, that's like a hair worth of kind of non-living tissue, and it just means that I've got a lovely clean nail plate and I've got loads of surface area to work on in comparison to what I did have. So I've got plenty of surface area to adhere the nail to. So this is where my process has changed a little bit. What I do is I etch with a 150 grit file, because I'm using CJP and that's how they recommend to do it. And I'm just literally taking the shine off and creating some tiny little scratches in the top of the nail. I'm not buffing because I don't want, if it's too smooth, it's literally going to take, it's not going to stick. But yeah, so I am doing this, and I do find with this client, she gets really good retention despite being a nail biter. So yeah, basically I need to make sure I'm right into the cuticle. This is what I love about the metal nail files. I moved over to a sanding band. Right. I moved over to, let me get comfortable so I can start rambling at you. I moved over to a sanding band because I thought, oh gosh, it'll be so much easier. And it definitely is easier. But I always feel like it was making it quite smooth. Now you can tickle, there's a certain technique you can do. But I've recently started going back to the hand file. It's just as quick because I've already got the file in my hand normally. And basically I just feel like you get more of the actual etches in the nail plate that the product can adhere to. So that's my preference anyway. I find that definitely the way to go with, certainly when I'm applying acrylic. Gel is usually different. I'll normally use either a lower grit file or maybe it's a 180 because you don't really need as much adhesion as you do with acrylic. I mean, the thing with acrylic though is it does last. And, you know, if you start infilling, you'll only need to do this once. So you won't be constantly reworking the nail plate. So yeah, once I've done that, I'll come back in a moment and I will go over the rest of the process. Now we need to apply our tips. I think I've said in other videos, the glue was just not playing with me today. So I was having to hold the tips on for ages. So some of these might be trimmed out or sped up or whatever, but it just was not sticking at all. It was quite cold and I think I need to replace my glue. So I did order some glue off Amazon. You know, those tiny little bottles. And I swear, just because it was convenient and I need to put in a proper order where I normally get my glue, which is normally Pro Impressions because these are their tips. And they do work beautifully together, but I just think my glue's probably a little bit I don't know, I think it's just lost its stick. But yeah, so since I did that, I've actually bought those little tubes that you get off Amazon of glue. And when I tell you that sticks in seconds, it was amazing. Honestly, I'm tempted just to stick with them because they literally just put a tiny little touch on the end of the nail, boom, nails on. Also, there wasn't glue like because it seeps into the nail. There wasn't glue everywhere, so like whereas sometimes with the other glues, because obviously you apply it to the tip, you can end up with it kind of bubbling over. So yeah, I highly recommend. If I think on, or if I'm going to keep using it and if I find it really good, I will start recommending it. But yeah, it's just a Google search of nail glues and I think I got something like 10 for £3. So also that's a huge bonus. So yeah, once I've done that, I will then kind of cut them to shape, file them, that kind of thing. My client wanted a square. She's got very teeny tiny nail plates. So what I did was I went in with kind of like a coffin tapered square tip. Now, when I do this because when I add the product, it will go out a little bit at the sides and it just means they don't look too duck shaped. Because obviously, because she's got little nail beds as well. See, that one stuck straight away. That's so irritating, honestly. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, basically, if I go for a slightly tapered tip, it means that the square is not going to be too square, but I will still get a lovely square nail. You'll see at the end. I wouldn't normally have done that type of shape on this length on this particular client, just because obviously got teeny tiny nail beds, but they looked so cute and fresh at the end. Honestly, 10 10, 10 10. What an idiot. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So I am just blending those tips in just a teeny little bit because obviously I mean, although they're wellless and all that kind of thing, you will often need to blend them in around the kind of wings. Sometimes I'll actually trim the wings off before I put them on. And when I say the wings, I mean the little bits down the side walls, the kind of pointy bit of the tip. So I will sometimes trim them off because inevitably they either don't stick or I end up having to file them off anyway, like I'm doing here. I'm not really touching the nail plate here, by the way. I've already touched the nail plate. What I'm doing there is I'm literally just blending on the tip just to make it a little bit thinner. So it doesn't, again, you're working on very small nails. We don't want any extra bulk. So once I've done all of that, I'll go in with my dehydrator and my primer. The dehydrator I'm using is just Bexy Glow one, but just because I've got it, in all honesty, any dehydrator will work. What I would recommend is sticking with the same primer. Now, I use the Young Nails Protein Bond, and I would recommend it to anybody. I think it's absolutely fantastic. You'll notice I'm just putting one tiny little drop on there, and it fills up the whole nail plate. Try not to to flood the cuticle too much or anything like that, because that in itself can cause lifting. So yeah, once I've done all of that, I will go in with my application in a moment. So I've got a little bit of monomer in my brush, then I do a tiny little tap, 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 and then I allow it to polymerise on my brush for just a moment, and then, apparently I wiped the bead off, but I will actually go in with a bead this time, I think. But yeah, so I allow it to polymerise on my brush because I don't want it to wipe away. Press it, let it release, and then I'll tuck it in and get it to shape. Now, this, obviously, there's a tiny, tiny nail, so I don't need much. I think on the rest of the nails I did some in one bead, some in two. It really doesn't matter. Do whatever you feel comfortable with. It was quite cold in the room that I was working in as well, as I said before, and that obviously does affect the setting time of your acrylic. But you'll see there, to be honest, I'm using, I think it's the one monomer, and it does set really, really nicely, I have to say. Yeah, it will be because I'm using CJP acrylic. So yeah, honestly, it just sets so beautifully. When I watch these back, I realise what a faffer I am. But I do like to try and do as much of this as possible because I really struggle now with filing because of my shoulders and my arms. So I do use my e-file as much as possible, but yeah, try and do as much as you can with your brush. And although they are little nails, I still want a bit of an apex. So I just added a little bit more just to kind of create just a teeny tiny little apex there. So next method I do exactly the same. Next nail I do the same because it's another quite a little nail. I find if I go in sideways with my bead, it kind of fills it up. You could also place it on and kind of draw it down by bouncing it down the nail a little bit. But yeah, I just find sometimes with little nails like this, because they're very slim nails as well, it just means that I can get a lot of that product in the centre where I need it to be to create a nice strong structure. So I'll then kind of gently ease that down towards the tip, and then I will kind of pat and press it to go where I want it to go. So this nail is where we do the 2 bead. So I'm going probably around about halfway up the nail. I'm placing that bead on. See, I'm not touching it too much initially. I'm allowing it to do its thing, move down, cleaning my brush, making sure my brush has still got a tiny bit of monomer on it. And then I am literally just kind of coaxing that towards the end of the nail and then kind of clipping off any excess. Then I go in with my next bead, which is just another bead by the Cuticle, and I will just literally tuck that in and blend it down. Again, it was a little bit colder than I would have liked, and I was kind of fighting against the temperature, but you'll see it was applying really, really nicely. Now, I did go out of shot on the index or pointer finger, wherever you're watching from. So I'll go straight onto the thumb in a moment. But the index was another, I think that was a 1 bead because her index finger's really, really small. So then I do a 2 bead, obviously, on the thumb. Remember as well, if you need to add more product, add more product. Don't feel like, oh, I've done 2 beads, I can't add any more, or you've somehow failed or something like that, because that's absolutely not the case. You'll see here, I noticed there was a tiny little bit at the side where I needed more. I probably went on with a slightly over generous bead, but I wanted to make sure it was really covered. And then I just literally pat that down into place, and look, lovely shape, no issues. It's just, the structure is more important than anything. So next we go in with our hand file. This metal file makes life so much easier. The replaceable file part on it is absolutely fantastic. The base is from Kirsty Meakin, I think, and then I think it's the Stalex ones or something, or some ones I got off Amazon. And it's just a really nice grit. It's not too gritty, and I can use it for pretty much every part of my service. So try and do the same routine on every nail. Now, I do have ADHD and I'm terrible for going back and forth, but it's probably one of I do try and stick with the kind of the same routine on every nail. So what I'll do is I'll go down the right hand side of the nail, then the left hand side of the nail, and then I'll bevel over the top. So I just make sure that free edge is in first, sorry, and then I'll do the right hand side of the nail, left hand side of the nail over the top. Next, I saw Nick from Tough Love Nails do this the other day, and she kind of finished a little bit with her e-file, and it just meant that she could get a really nice, smooth cuticle without kind of being too heavy with the hand file around the cuticle. So, and then buff out any file marks with the buffer. So, I did this, and I was actually really pleased with the results. I think I'm going to be doing that from now on with acrylic. So once we've done all of that, we need to go in and cleanse and make sure it's all ready for our product. Now, you can go in with your base coat as well. A lot of people do that, but because it was really smooth, I didn't really need to. And I use the Honer gel paint, and I find it doesn't bleed too much. But if you are struggling, try using a base coat with your French. So what I'll do is I try and do these the same kind of way for everyone. So I'll do a line across the bottom as kind of thick as I'm going to want it approximately anyway. And then I will draw a line down either side, and then I'll join it towards the middle. I hope that makes sense. But you'll see what I'm doing there. And I do that on pretty much every nail. And they were so uniform. This is probably one of the nicest sets of French I think I've done in a long time, because people don't always ask for a lot of French with me. It's either solid colours or a bit of design, and I have to say I've really enjoyed doing them. It was such a challenge, and I was so pleased with how they turned out. So yeah, I'll let you watch this and then I'll come back in a moment. So once that's all done and we've given it the full 60-second cure, I will then go in with my top coat. Now I did do a bit of flash curing on this with my little flash curing light, just to try and make sure it didn't move. I didn't really need it, but you can do that. In all honesty, I probably won't bother doing it again. I think I'll just go back to my normal routine of putting the top coat on, and then just before it goes onto the lamp, going in with a dry, kind of a dryish or a very clean gel brush, and just wiping down the sides, just making sure there's no bulk on the sides that we don't need and that's going to ruin our lovely shape that we've spent ages getting. and in a moment we'll have the final result. Thank you so much for watching, and I do hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions or any tutorials you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. Bye now.